What I'm going to read is early on in my book, Reconnecting with the Heart, and it concerns one of the pieces of conditioning about emotion that I think has a huge effect on us, but it tends to be hidden. We've learned to regard emotions as either positive or negative. The assumption is so automatic that if asked to make a spontaneous list of positive and negative feelings, you'd probably put love, joy, happiness, confidence and contentment on the positive side, while sadness, frustration, anger and anxiety would end up on the negative side. And if challenged about this division, you'd probably insist that it's obvious. Happiness feels better than loneliness, irritation never feels enjoyable, and who on earth looks forward to feeling rejected? We cannot overestimate the impact of growing up in an environment that teaches us feelings are either good or bad. The first major consequence is that good feelings have become desirable and bad feelings have become undesirable according to a code of moral, cultural, and even medical correctness. A positive feeling such as love is desirable because it has a good effect on others, shows you in a socially acceptable light, and is good for you physically. Anger, on the other hand, is believed to have a detrimental effect on others, to show you in an unpleasant light socially, and to be bad for your health. One consequence of this division is that the idea of valuing anger as an emotion has disappeared, while the pursuit of happiness and love has become paramount. We suffer agonies of self-repression in order to deny feelings of anger because they imply a moral failing, whereas the achievement of happiness is an extraordinarily seductive goal, implying the proper and desirable state to which we are entitled. This notion of desirable and undesirable feelings generates a whole cultural momentum of its own. Enormous amounts of time, energy and money are directed towards making people feel happier. As a result, most of us are unable to recognise or acknowledge the whole range of feelings precisely because we've learned to censor ourselves. We've learned to ignore or hide or bury certain emotions because we believe them to be negative and therefore undesirable and unpleasant. The consequences are far-reaching. Instead of accepting sorrow as a perfectly normal emotion under certain circumstances, psychiatrists increasingly regard deep sadness as symptomatic of depressive disorder, requiring appropriate treatment to correct it. There's a second spin-off to the negative-positive division. We believe that anger is contradictory to the feeling of love, or that anxiety is at the opposite end of the spectrum from confidence. This either-or division doesn't stand up in reality because actual experience tells us that emotions coexist. It's possible to feel anger and love towards somebody at exactly the same moment. You can feel angry and loving towards a close friend or a child. To feel simultaneous grief and relief, for example, after the death of somebody who you love dearly, but whose death also brings to an end a period of terrible physical suffering. A third consequence of categorizing certain emotions as undesirable is the belief that a bad emotion acts like a virus. Cultural fear of contamination in many societies has led to the isolation and quarantine of those labelled as mentally ill or psychiatrically disturbed. Although there are sometimes valid reasons why some individuals are better restrained for their own good, fear of contagion is seen in more ordinary situations. After experiencing a death, divorce, redundancy or some personal trauma, people often describe their hurt and surprise when friends, neighbours, even relatives avoid contact. Hospital patients approaching the end of their lives are sometimes not informed of their terminal condition, nor are their families, so that dealing with negative feelings can be avoided by medical staff. Helplessness and fear of being drawn in and caught up in others' undesirable feelings prompt us to shield ourselves so we keep our distance. At the very time when individuals are most in need of a little care and space to talk, when they need their loss, anger or fears acknowledged so they can come to terms with a new reality, social constraints encourage them to hide their feelings like an unsightly affliction, or stay silent and disguise them with a superficial, cheerful and acceptable veneer.